What is up guys, Andy Forrest Theme Runner here. Welcome back to another video, and today I'm giving you guys my first impressions of the INOV-8 Terraultra G 270. There we go, an awesome 7.1 mile run done and dusted with James out there on the trails. Great to catch up with James, testing out the INOV-8 Terraultra G 270. Excited to get into my thoughts today. I've been excited to record this one, test this shoe out and give you guys my first impressions. Then as always, we'll go through the technical information first. Before we dive in today, just a word of note, INOV-8 have indeed provided me this shoe for the purpose of review. However, they are not paying me to say anything, nor do they have any editorial control over this video. These are purely my thoughts and I'll be giving them all to you very shortly. If you're excited for today's video guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and we'll start with the tech. So start off by saying I went true to size in this shoe, UK size 13, and the sizing was absolutely spot on. We have a 12mm stack height in the heel, 12mm in the forefoot, meaning we have a 0 heel to toe drop in this shoe, and in my size it came in at 348 grams or 12.3 ounces. And as always, we'll work our way from the heel counter area, talk about the ankle collar, the tongue, the lacing, the upper, the midsole and the outsole. So let's dive straight in and talk about this heel counter area. So we've got some good cushioning in and around this top of the ankle collar area here. Lovely, sits under the ankle bone nicely. No rubbing, no nothing, and we have a stout heel counter with a little bit of flexion. And where I feel like they've done really well with this shoe, because it is lightweight, it does feel comfy, and it feels for me like I want to pick up the pace in it. And that was all about the testing in yesterday's run, which we'll talk about shortly, is that they provided enough cushioning in the back here to give you that comfort feeling, but at the same time they've not bulked it out. Some trail shoes and some other shoes, they've chucked so much junk in and around the back here, whatever it might be, super amounts of cushioning, clips, really bulk out the heel counter that it can feel a little bit heavy in the back there. But they've saved weight there. I feel like they've done a good job in providing something that's going to give you the comfort that you want and everything, but it still feels nice and nimble. In terms of the tongue, we have another area where I feel they've saved some weight. Nice lightweight thin tongue, cushioning along the top of the tongue, but when it gets to the very top here, it's paper thin. It's quite a short tongue, but the laces do sit across the top nicely, and so you have this little bit poking out, and that's about it. And this tongue is gusseted, but it's gusseted. Now this is clever. I didn't realise this, and it might be done in other trail shoes, but because I don't review a ton of trail shoes, it's not something I've ever picked up on. They've gusseted the tongue at the top here, so just under the lacing system here. It's really hard to show you on camera, but I don't know if this is going to pick it up, but if you can just see down through there, the elastic there attaches just under the lacing system, and what that for me does, stops any debris going in, any stones, any gravel, anything like that lands on the top here. Nothing's going to wheedle its way down the sides. There is just a complete seam going all the way up there and all the way up there to stop anything getting in your shoe. So I thought that was absolutely brilliant. So the lockdown, once I cinched it, because this is quite an open and roomy shoe, once I cinched it down nicely, it was absolutely brilliant. Great lockdown, great comfort in the back there. Talking of roomy, we have incredible volume in the toe box, in and around. You can just see by the height of the shoe, it's just such a roomy shoe. Gives you room to swell when your feet get hot and stuff, and room to splay your toes. It was so comfortable to run in, really, really nice. A major difference from the Asics shoe that I tested last week. I feel like in the Asics shoe, as much as it was great, there definitely wouldn't be as much room for manoeuvre as in this shoe. volume in the height, volume in the depth, volume everywhere. It's just a really good shoe. But as I said, I was able to get such a good lockdown that I felt like my feet were nice and secure in there. A little bit of wiggle room in the ankle area, but other than that, absolutely fantastic. And then we have their Power Flow Max midsole, which I felt was firm but comfortable. I enjoyed it. It was a good ride. It felt light, it felt nimble, it felt good. I think like it's hard to liken it to a midsole that I've tried because I've never tried INOV-8 shoes before, but I feel like it's going to be a midsole that breaks in after a few runs. It was absolutely spectacular when I got on the trails, but when I was going from the road to the trail, I did feel like it was quite firm. I feel like it's going to bed in. It's probably just a first run thing, but it was quite firm getting to the trails. Once I got off the trails, which we'll talk about the first run in a second, I then had about 1.5 miles of road home, and it felt like a different shoe. So I feel like I was just breaking it in getting there. So definitely on the firmer ride, but still lightweight, poppy and nimble, felt really, really good. And then we have their graphene grip on the bottom, 4mm lugs, and we have these cutouts all the way down the shoe here, which kind of, I feel, aided with the flexion when I was going through the gait cycle, landing, towing off. It just gave that extra, it kind of helped with that propulsion basically. It wasn't as stiff as a board. Some trail shoes you can land and really just, literally there's no motion in the shoe, but this really allows you to get that flexion you need through your foot strike. And I've got to say, the grip on this shoe, I didn't shut up about it when I was talking to James yesterday. The grip on the shoe, especially weirdly on the roads, even though it's not a road shoe at all, was absolutely insane. So that is it for the tech. So on to my first impressions. How did I find this shoe? Well, the first thing that springs to mind straight away is grip. The grip on this thing was absolutely insane. But let me start off, let me rewind by saying the build quality in INOV-8 shoes is unbelievable. So many of you said when I had these in for testing, you are going to love them. They were absolutely brilliant. There's a couple of points that I'm going to point out to you. Nothing negative, but a couple of things you should be aware of with this shoe, which we'll come to shortly. But overall, you guys are right. The build quality on this thing is absolutely insane. And I can see straight away why this is an award-winning shoe. So the first thing, literally the thoughts going through my head when I was running it, stepped out the door, started running on the pavement was, oh, this is quite firm. Grip is amazing on the roads. And actually, I know it's got this graphene grip in it. And it did amazing in the trails and the wet mud. James was slipping and sliding a bit in his Evo Speed Goats. But I was able to just kind of plow through the mud and feel confident. I just kept saying to him the whole time, I feel confident in this shoe. It breathes confidence through you, which is great. It's exactly what you want. Even though the lugs are only 4mm deep, don't get me wrong, you wouldn't want to take this through the craziest, boggiest, muddiest terrain, but on that lighter, muddier trails, it just does a sterling job. So for me, as I said, the grip on this thing was insane. Going through, giving those live updates to James as I was running, bit firm on the roads, hit the trails, it really started to open up. And what we did about 4 miles then on the trails, and we did like 1.5 miles back on the roads, and I kind of feel like it had started to open up a little bit. The midsole had just started to break in a bit. It didn't take long, but that first mile, as it so happens with so many shoes, like the Skechers Razor Accessory tested, like the Atreus base model that I tested ages ago, that first mile shakes your fillings a little bit in your teeth, and then literally as the shoe warms up, which exactly this thing did, it starts to get a heck of a lot better. The second thing that I want to point out is the room. The room was just a pleasure in the shoe. It was absolutely fantastic. And that leads me on to one of the points to note. I mentioned it in the technical section. This is quite open and roomy, this area here. So my ankle was able to wobble a little bit side to side. Now, I think going down some of the more technical terrain, I was just aware that my ankles weren't quite as tight and secure in the shoe. The upper and everything, my top of my foot felt really, really locked down, but there were a couple of points that I was landing on roots and just kind of rocking a little bit. So I was just aware not to fly down the hills too much. That's not to say, I don't know, I think maybe it's just there's quite a lot of room in this area, and I think my ankle, maybe it's a lockdown thing, maybe I need to keep working on getting it a bit tighter. But to be honest with you, that's it. And the second thing that you guys need to know, if you're new to INOV-8 shoes, is they're a zero drop shoe, meaning that there's no difference between the heel and the toe. It's a very natural way of running, and it promotes that natural running form. And that's great, but it can put a strain on your calves and Achilles, which it doesn't for me, which I'm very grateful for. But what it does for me is it works on my dorsiflexion. So when I'm going up hills, the front of my ankles are really dorsiflecting. The dorsiflexion is literally at their max. And for someone who's played football for many years and have multiple ankle injuries and has limited dorsiflexion, it does certainly make your ankles work. I'm very grateful. I didn't have calf tightness or anything running in them. They were great. Some of you guys, when you do transition to zero drop, depending on the type of drop you're used to, will experience that tightness. It's to each their own really, but I'm very grateful. I didn't have it in the Ultras that I used last year, and I certainly didn't have it in this shoe. And those are the only points to note. I've got to say that this was such a good ride. I was just out there just saying to James, yeah, I love it. Yeah, this is great. The grip on this thing, I just kept saying the grip is amazing. The grip is amazing. It's not obviously, when you compare it to some light road shoes, it's not obviously in that realm, but in terms of a light trail shoe, this is it. You know, this matches up, like in terms of weight. I think there's a few grams difference between the Asics from last week and this one. Both super light. I both felt like I could push the pace in this one. Towards the end, I got down to low 7-minute mile pace, and it just felt easy. It just wanted me to move. I said to James, this thing wants me to move. I'd feel comfortable running long distances in this shoe. It's just... It's brilliant. It's certainly not going to be my last venture into INOV-8 shoes. This has made me want to try more of them. And I'd love to know in the comments below which ones you guys love. If you are INOV-8 fans, what are the models that I should be looking out for, especially going into 2022? What are the ones that are coming out that are most highly anticipated? I need to know, because I certainly need to be using stuff like this more. It just put a smile on my face. It was such a good shoe. As I said, once that first initial mile was out of the way, it was an absolute pleasure. So a solid start for the INOV-8, but plenty more testing to come. Obviously, I'll be doing more longer runs in it. I'll be taking it for some speedier runs. I'll be taking it everywhere, especially through winter. This and the Asics will be getting a heck of a lot more use. So that's it from me today, guys. That's my first thoughts on the INOV-8 Terraultra G 270. Let me know in the comments below if you guys have tried it. If you agree with me, it's definitely an award-winning shoe. I can't fault it. I can't fault it. I'd love to hear your comments. Anyway, if you enjoyed today's video, give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Until then.